Book 101 is all about the books that I read for the last 40 years. And today I have my special guest. He is an author and the author of the upcoming book, Beautiful Chaos. No other than Mr. Paul Harrington.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Welcome to Book 101, Mr. Paul. And can you please introduce more about yourself?
Hi, Daniel. Thanks for having me. Yeah, my name's Paul Harrington, and I've been working on this memoir for the last probably about 4 or 5 years. It was sort of around COVID time that it was the it kicked off, or sort of the genesis started around quite a sort of dark moment of my life, and I started writing this book, Beautiful Chaos, and I'm here to talk about it, and look forward to going through it with you, Daniel.
Mr. Paul Harrington, thank you so much for sharing your memoir to the world. And your memoir centers on turning chaos into control through fitness, discipline, silence, and nature. Can you describe what the chaos looked like for you before this transformation began?
Yes, I had it's weird thing because I had some very bad addiction problems, and I don't drink or smoke or do anything now, and I've understood that was probably the really was the chaos, the real chaos, not being in control. And anyone who has a problem with addiction will know that is something, especially if you're a binger. It's just it's being controlled by something. If you ever, I live in central London now, and if I ever see someone on the street that sort of genuinely with crack, you see people walking very quickly and then marching. I mean, and it's the demon of the drug demon has totally controlled them. And I know that anybody, and I've had experience with drugs, that you would never expect that it would ever take you to this dark place, and that was the chaos. A lot of it was related to um, self-medication. So I had a business which I had a friend of mine who wasn't such a friend, and my business rapidly down. I had a big property empire, and it went down pretty rapidly. Now it's a weird thing, I think, in life, because the chaos made me go a little bit crazy, because I felt that in some ways I was being punished. You know, when you things fall apart. So I was lost my business, and I started getting very much into cocaine, a very dangerous drug. I think it's probably the most devilish drug of all. I think some people can take it and can. It amazes me people can take it and leave it, and then you get functional use and you get binges. And I was a binger, and it really took me into some very dark places. I I wasn't in control, and that's what I say about when you see someone on the street, they would never imagine that they would take, because no one ever expects to take something and it to be take control, whether it be alcohol, whether it be heroin, whatever it is. No one in their mind would ever take it knowing if it's going to take you to such a dark and destructive path. And when you're in it, and I can look at it now from an outside in, I can see the absolute demon of the drug. I mean, my demon was cocaine. I've experienced quite a few of my friends. I've been a generation in the UK people in my generation, born in 1966. My parents were um, my parents' generation was smokers and drinkers. English people, we are drinkers, and there's a lot of people that's caught up in that net with alcohol. But then alcohol also, um, you can get caught up with other drugs, and mine was alcohol and cocaine, and things got really, really went into a supernova of destruction, because everything started falling apart around sort of COVID time, um, and things got pretty heavy from there, Daniel. It got quite dark.
Mr. Paul, why did you specifically identify fitness, discipline, silence, and nature as the pillars of your therapy?
Beautiful question. All those words, very beautiful, and I love them because I every single word of them, I look at them as like my mantra. They are massively important. Um, I found that from a child that it's weird when you a lot of people are stuck in a loop. A loop is something where you're going round and round in a circle where you're stuck in something. And I was stuck in this loop, loop of drugs. So imagine you're in a stadium and you're just stuck in this loop and you're trying to get out. Now I've realized that when I was at my lowest, I moved ironically enough to Ibiza. Now I partied quite a lot in Ibiza before in the past, and I'm sort of one of those passengers that go on fly to Ibiza, all party, yeah, 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 and you see them at the airport asleep, and the plane's dead quiet on the way back. I was one of those for years, but this time was over COVID. I was going through a very dark time. A friend of mine had gone through the 12 steps, and I flew out to Ibiza, and he said stay in this campsite, which was the north of the island, and it was on a I stayed in it. It sounds like a story, like a story written story, but it was real. And he had is an airstream in the campsite. There was no one there apart from some hippies, and the airstream was right by the ocean. And he said, look, you need to get out of London. So it was it was through a sort of gap through the COVID, and I flew over there. And this was my beginning, and this was probably really the genesis of my book as well, because this was when there was so much chaos, and not just chaos that happened in London. There was lots of depression, and anyone who's got any addiction problems will know that one of the horrible things with addiction is the come down. You have come down, and the come down with depression gets quite dangerous because your mind starts telling you things which aren't real. It's quite a dangerous place to be. But going over to Ibiza, being in the campsite, being by the ocean, I mentioned this a few times. I had a fascination with ants. I had live in this airstream, this caravan by the sea, and I'd watch the ants pick up the bread and move, and they'd be in their world. And it just taught me the importance of being present, because a lot of the problem with any addiction and any depression and all these things that happen is you're not present. You're constantly worried. You're upset about the mistakes that you've made, the decisions that you've made, and there's fear. There's absolute fear, um, and what you don't have is presence. And being by which I'm so it's so important for me now is to be by nature, whether it be trees, rain, forest, sand, sea. And I use this word exercise. Your eyes need to exercise. I mean that by somewhere where your eyes can go and get a view. It's a very, very powerful thing to be somewhere where it's quiet and your eyes, whether it be on top of a building, or it be looking at the clouds even, but somewhere where your eyes can be stretched and exercised. And if you can do that, it's kind of it's a cheat code for meditation. It's a cheat code for actually for one moment stop the train from moving, because when there is chaos, things and also with drugs, everything just goes so quickly. So to your point, that was the beginning of the peacefulness and the nature. But then being in nature, I started walking and walking, and I started running. Um, and there was a particular place in the north of the island, Cala Savante. I can never say it correctly. It's the north of Ireland of Ibiza. And I rented out this racer, and there's a hill in the north which is really, it goes up for about 3.5 kilometers. And I started cycling up the hill. I had no choice but to get up the hill. I had to get up it, and that's when I identified a lot of pain, and a lot of the pain that I was going through. I could identify with it's a real thing. I could identify, and everybody says, most people say it in such a candid way of like, you should go and exercise. It's a lot harder to do, when you're going through stuff. But that was the beginning of me identifying the value of exercise and the importance of exercise. I look at it like this in some ways, because the beauty and the bad thing about in with lots of drugs is you're chasing an endorphin, and the thing with exercise is it's a similar, it's still an endorphin thing, but it's a long it's a longer way to get it. It's a harder way to get it. It's a bit like a pathway in the morning when you get up, you've got the dew in the field, you make the first steps. You don't want to do it because your feet are going to get wet, but you walk across that part field. You don't want to do it, but there's some reason you've done it, and you've got to find the reason why you're going to do it. And there's lots of these very healthy supermarines going, you don't need motivation, you need discipline. Well, that's rubbish, because you don't just turn up, like wake up one day and you've just got this mad discipline. It comes in a phase. Motivation is the first phase of that. And the motivation for me was, I had a 15-year-old son and I had to get my act together. And that was a lot to do with it. I'd been married, my wife had left me. So I had a bit of, I was quite depressed, really quite, lots of things were going on. And that kind of, in some bizarre way, motivated me. It's like a fight back. It was to walk across that meadow and make those first steps. Now, if you can make those first steps across that meadow, you'll have a footprint. And once you've done it once, you do it again, and you make a pathway. And there's a, it, it's a long way. It's a bit the opposite to drugs, because you've got to go through the pain first and you get the reward later. With drugs, you generally get the reward first and the pain is later. So you're still chasing that endorphin. And I now, religiously understand that. The only reason I understand it now is because I've made such a pathway in that direction. Now it's become something which is, I cannot not do it, but it has to be made, and you've got to walk across that meadow first to make a pathway.
Very well said, Mr. Paul. Very well said. Beautifully articulated. The phrase beautiful chaos is striking. How did your perspective on chaos itself evolve during this process from something overwhelming to something potentially beautiful?
Well, my life has always been quite chaotic. So the name of the book is been very interesting. I mean, sometimes I feel like I'm living in a simulation. I know it's a very fashionable word to say at the moment, but I truly do. And I tell you the reason why. That I was born in 1966. Now, anyone who knows about football will know that England was the only time that England won the World Cup was 1966. And I get some sort of joy when England keep on losing these tournaments and knowing, well, at least I was born in 1966 and they did win it.
Mm,
Um, so that was quite a monumental thing, which was the first thing. And secondly, I was married. My mother was married. She was married to a Chinese man called Mr. Wu. And my birth certificate actually says Paul Wu. It doesn't say Paul Harrington. Now, this is a girl from East London. She lived in Stepney in East London. In 1966, she had an affair with my biological father, who was a Ghanaian chauffeur driver. So when
mhm.
this is a bizarre thing. In fact, there's a guy called Simon Mirren, who was a good friend of mine, Helen Mirren's nephew. And I told him about this, and he wrote a series called The Versailles, and he put a clip in the Versailles of this actual scene when the Queen had an affair with this black guy, but it's bizarre. But anyway, my mother had my my father, which was Mr. Wu, just gave her an ultimatum. It wasn't my father, my biological father, but on marriage it was. And so I was put up for care. She had to leave me, and I had a change in osmosis, and the most amazing thing happened, because after 3 to 4 weeks, I was placed into a foster family called the Harringtons. And my mother, she already had three of her own children. And after 6 months, the Sow Hammets came up and said, "Look, we want to take this kid, and put him to care." And they said, "No, we want to keep him." And that was my birth of being a Harrington. And I have to say, it was the most amazing childhood. My parents had another three of their own children, but they were all white, so I was literally the black sheep in the family, and I never felt any different, apart from I had brown skin and they had white. And my parents, I had an amazing relationship with my parents and my brothers and sisters. I loved my mother incredibly, but I understood many things. And one of the first emotions I felt was a thing called fear. And because when I was a young boy, the Tower Hamlets used to come around and check on me. And my parents, before they used to come around, used to check and make sure I was okay. And I would be scared that I'd be taken away from this family. And that would my first emotion really I understood. At first was love because of my family, but fear of being taken away. And I remember that really clearly. I used to hate. I never used to show it, but I knew my parents were nervous because they would be spoiling me before the visits, and the Tower Hamlets used to come around, and they were very professional, but they'd used to use this saying, you're in a safe space and this stuff. But I knew with it from a young boy that that was my first emotion of fear. Um, yeah, that was quite a thing. And then you've got to understand then, Daniel, that this was in 1966, and then I experienced I in the UK then you could have programs like Alf Garnett. They would have used the word um, wog and coon, really horrible racist slurs. You had marmalade jam with a picture of a gollywog on it, and there would be things like upstairs, downstairs. So when I went to school, that would have not upstairs, there'd be things called a minstrel show, and that would show white people in blackface. So racism for me was really odd because I didn't understand it as a kid because I never experienced it at home. Clearly not. My brothers and sisters, my mum and dad, they were fine. It was only when I went to school and then kids start calling me names. Now I know they didn't understand what they were calling me, but it was acceptable racism because on BBC, which is a huge channel in the UK, were having programs like the Black and White Minstrel Show, where you'd have, and they would quite happily have people, racist comedians talk using racist slurs. Um, and so that was another thing which was bad. And then from there, that was for my protection was probably when I was a young boy. But then as I got older, it got more violent, and I got in. There was in the UK then there was a lot of National Front, and there was lots of things called these guys called skinheads, and they were that was my fear, skinheads. So I've experienced a lot of violence and a lot of racism as a child, and it was confusing at the beginning, but then it got quite violent.
Mr. Paul, as an debut author, what are your short-term and long-term goals?
My what
Short-term and long-term goals.
do you know what? I don't really know. I think I'm on this sort of journey now. I never thought that I'd be sitting here talking about on a book review about a book. So I think life has got very many surprises. From the day I was born to sitting here now, I've experienced extreme wealth. I was quite wealthy. I built up an empire, worth millions, and I thought life was done. And then rapidly, I had a horrific betrayal, and the stack went down pretty rapidly, and I was at my most darkest moments. And now suddenly, for some reason, I don't know, I do feel much more spiritual. I think I'm much more connected. The universe now, I'm much more connected. I'm much more of a deeper thinker, and I think if you can get there's something very powerful about if you can get yourself in a position, and it's a difficult thing to, like, mention this pathway. If you make a pathway with health, and you can uh, just be clean with alcohol and everything, I think you can tune into a different frequency, the universal frequency, and I think that it creates a current, like as if you get in a riptide in the sea, you get a current that drags you into a pathway. Now my current beforehand was quite dark, and I was surrounded by itself, and I take accountability for this. I was attracting bad bad energy, and I look at that now and I can see it. And now that I I eat like an astronaut. I get up early, I eat like I don't have any poison in my body. I train like I have to train, but it's taking me. It's not something I'm finding difficult now. It's a current that is making me flow into a direction. Um, and me sitting here talking to you about a book which I've written, and my life is this is a person I didn't know existed. So the answer to that is I don't know, and I just think that just as long as I do the right things and I know that I'm following the right path, I'm not having that feeling of shame and regret. I think you can. I think there's an element of just being proud of yourself. I think there's a lot of too many people have got this element of chasing happiness, which is a dangerous, dangerous thing to chase. Sometimes it's not all about being happy, and being happy is not something, when I would do drugs that make me happy, I'd be more excited about the drug dealer being outside. Understanding happiness and the pursuit of it. Um, sometimes can be alcohol can make you happy. Certain things can be happy. Sometimes it's not. You can get more um, information from not happiness. You get more information with reflection of something which may be sad. And when I think I lost my mother, I never, when I think about it, I feel happiness, but I also feel sadness. And I'm happy to be feeling that in a bizarre way. So just understanding feelings, and understanding there's flow as a current that's flowing through at the moment, and make sure that I'm not going to dislodge, or break, the paddle in any way by doing something, which is going to take me away from that course of direction that I'm going to. And I think by being in control of my demons and doing the right thing, and making sure that try and be careful about energy, be careful about the people you have around you. And also, I've learned to understand, spend time by myself, and I understand who I am. I think a lot of times we've got people around. To be a creator and to create something, you have to have time. I'm sure you having this podcast. There had been an awful lot of time where you've had to spend time by yourself to work out. Actually, you know what, Daniel, I'm going to set this thing up. A lot of people around you are being, what are you talking about? Don't be rubbish. You've had to spend time to find that discipline and focus. And that takes this, it's a lot harder than people think, especially now with all these distractions. But to find time where you wake up in the morning, or wherever time you manage to ignite this journey you've been on, would have taken some time when you're with yourself. And in the world we live in, with the chaos that we've got with the world, I think it's an important thing to do, and being at peace with nature and earth is where you can find that. You can find those keys because they're out there for everybody. I just think there's so much, especially now with social media and everything. Just find that peace, and find out who you are. A lot of times, I think people don't really know who they are. There's too much noise.
Mr. Paul, we salute you because you find out the right path in your life. And what would be your piece of advice for those people out there who want to find the right path?
I think it's just spending time by yourself, and I wouldn't go too mad with it. I got a thing I do every Sunday. I put my phone on do not disturb, and this is something which is a simple thing to do, whether it be an hour or 2 hours. Put your phone on do not disturb, go somewhere like a park, ideally where there's not so many people, and just go for a walk is very good, somewhere it's not too stressful, and just find nature, where it be take your shoes off and walk in the park and feel the grass going in your feet. You know, you don't have to go as far as hugging a tree. I know it's a big fashion at the moment, hugging trees. You don't have to do that. Just walk in the forest, walk somewhere where it's quiet. If it's nighttime, you somewhere like New York or somewhere like that, walking at night time is really interesting, where there's foxes around. Just find somewhere where it's going to make you present. You find that in just with nature. Nature is an amazing, powerful thing, and we go through life sometimes, and it's just like being on a train, and it's just flicking by, and you've got to slow time down, and just slow time down. You could be worried about the kids, worrying about your parents, worrying about this, worry, and then your phone rings, and this goes on, that goes on. Just put the phone down for a little while and learn to find presence, and presence is key. And if you go on a train in London, and I'll tell you why it's a good experiment. Just sit down sometimes. This is another thing you can do. Sit down on the train, put your phone in your pocket, and look at everybody in the train, and look at everybody on their phones. Look at everybody not being present. They're attached to something. If you took all those phones away from those people and they're looking at a device of nothing, you think they've got a problem, a real problem. And this is the thing. Just learn to get to be present. Take away things. Obviously, it's a useful thing. We're in an amazing time, but you need to find presence in your life and spend time about who you are, and just spend that moment and, who am I? What am I doing? Okay, let's slow time. Just spend time. We live in such a crazy times now, and I think just slow look out the train window and actually look to see that's there, because at the moment, not the moment, the world we live in is just flicking by. I think that's an important thing that can help.
Thank you for your advice, Mr. Paul. And before we wrap up our discussion for today, I'm inviting you to please do listen to my other podcast, people. My other podcast, because of my abstract essay, is already in fifth season, abstract poetry in second season, and my book 101 review in fifth season too, a comedy 101 in second season, and my food 101 in fifth season as well, geography 101 in fourth season, and my baby podcast, law 101 and mental health 101. Love Letters in third season, and my movie 101 review and music 101 in its fourth season, and science 101 and sex 101 in its first season. Please listen to them wherever you listen your podcast. Mr. Paul, why is it important for you to crystallize this journey into a beautiful chaos? What do you hope readers experiencing their own chaos take away from your story about finding control through these specific means?
Well, I don't think it's for me to say. I think it's, I think, like I said, this wasn't journey was planned for a reason, or for any reason, as a self-help book, or it's just a book which is about my life. And I think as I've gone along, bizarrely enough, I've had a lot of people reaching out to me that have had problems, certainly with substance abuse. And I hope that, that I think there's so many different addictions are very personal to different people. I've learned that. I think you can't have everyone's, there's a rules for someone may not work for someone else. So the way I've dealt with it, and I've dealt with my journey and how I've navigated out of it, may help people. And if that does, that would be amazing. But I do think it's an understanding of what works for you. And I think, hopefully if some people, listen to what I'm saying, and there's a way that helps them, then, that would make me very, very happy. But I didn't write the book for that reason. I think it's just evolved. And I think that the book's been like an anchor to me, because it's anybody that writes will understand that your brain has to be clean. So that's been an interesting thing, because you can't write with a hangover. So I don't drink anymore. I don't do any drugs. I train. I'm like a user and a supplier, but I know with exercise, it's something I can control the dosage. So really, honestly, Daniel, I think, really, if anybody can get some sort of insight from what I've said and what I'm writing, for me would be an incredible joy.
Mr. Paul Harrington, thank you so much for sharing your upcoming memoir, Beautiful Chaos. Can you please invite our listeners to support this beautiful, beautiful memoir?
Certainly, you can catch me on there's bits of the clip we've got, and we'll be now announcing the book when it's going to come out, on Beautiful Chaos 1966. You can catch all much of the bits of my journey on there, and yeah, and that's it. We're hopefully, like I said, we should have the book out early next year, and that's it. Thank you for having me, and look forward to getting this book out, and when, as soon as it does, I'll be letting you know about it for sure.
Yes, people, let's support Mr. Paul Harrington, because if you support him, for sure, more and more and more empowering books to come. So, Mr. Paul, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much, Daniel. Thanks for having me.
More to come, people. See you soon.